Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Had a few things happen this weekend, right? Had the Super Bowl, had the debate. We're going to talk about all of them. Getting a little editing work done on my next book, The Comeback. Still whittling it down to a point where I like it. I've had the editor go through it. I've had some readers go through the entire novel for me, taking their notes, their suggestions, and now I'm reading it myself, seeing some parts that might be not explained enough or explained too much and can be cut down. So I'm continuing to work on that. So I tend to be spending a lot of time by myself recently, which isn't unusual for my lifestyle and me living here in Madeira Beach, Florida. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can also find me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. Funny thing happened to me this weekend. I went to Walmart and I bought a few things, and I walked out with only one of the bags. Here the clerk had put my items in two bags, and I didn't even realize it. And I took one bag and left the other bag there and didn't realize it till today. And so I had luckily the bag I took had the receipt in it. So I took the receipt back there, and they can go right into their security cameras to see if what I say actually happened. And of course they found out it was true. I just walked away and left one bag sitting there. So I got that stuff back. I could go back into the store, get those items, didn't have to pay for them again. So I want to send a big shout out to Walmart. And then also, I wouldn't have never even thought of doing that. I would have thought you just have to go back in and buy them all over again, spend more money. But a girl I know said, you go in there with your receipt and you'll probably be okay. As long as you're telling the truth, of course, which I was. So that was something weird that happened this weekend. I can't remember ever doing that before. Let's get right to the show. The debate. No, let's go to the Super Bowl first. I was, being that it's not politics, I'm very surprised that Denver won. I wasn't rooting for either team. I wouldn't have even watched it had I not been hanging out with my parents yesterday evening. I would have been happy. I saw one of the other channels on NBC, the sports network for NBC. They had curling on. The American women were playing China in curling. You know that it's like shuffleboard on ice. Love that game. I'm being totally serious. It's mesmerizing to me for some reason. I would have rather watched that than the Super Bowl. Just kind of the way I am. If it's not the Steelers, and I didn't even watch them that much this year. Had the Steelers been in the Super Bowl, of course I would have watched it. But if they're not in it, I can just take it or leave it. It really just does not concern me one way or the other. But I did get to watch a little curling, which was cool. There are a couple attractive young ladies on that American curling team. And I don't know if they won or not. Last time we were watching it, they were tied. So I don't know what it ended up happening. But when the Olympics come around, love finding that online to watch. Love it. Very surprised, though, that Denver handled Carolina the way they did. Cam Newton, it was a little bit of a choke job. There was, of course, a lot of turnovers, some big plays, made a big difference. And I'm happy for Peyton Manning. I guess he's an okay guy. I don't get very excited about him at all. So, only thing I can think of is that the Steelers played the Broncos in Denver tougher than the Panthers played the Broncos in San Francisco. So, I'm standing here tonight, thinking, I think my Steelers could have won that Super Bowl. I really think they could have. Oh, well, way it goes. The debate. Once again, I don't know if I would have watched it had my parents not been watching it, but we ended up watching the entire thing, however long it was, 2.5 hours, something like that on Saturday night. What's funny is, during the debate, the entire time, you know what I was doing? I was practicing putting cartridges into one of my Glock magazines. Tell you what, you get down to that 15th round in that magazine, it is difficult. And that's exactly why I ordered a loader this weekend. A pretty good loader where I won't have to do it manually anymore. Just practicing, taking all the bullets out, putting them all back in. Get down to that 14th and 15th one because that's how much the stock ones hold on a Glock, for a Glock 19 anyway. It gets tough. So I ended up ordering 2 additional magazines, 17-round magazines that are actually from a Glock 17. I ordered one 33-round magazine, which is from a Glock 18 that also shoots 9mm. And then I ordered 2 loaders. I'm going to give one to my dad, and I'm going to keep one for myself. So I can bring all those to the shooting range, load them all up, go to the shooting range. That's like 100. I'll have 100 rounds already loaded, and I get all my shooting done. I don't have to worry about reloading anything there at all, which is a pretty good deal for me. So I'm going to be stocked up. I'm going to be ready when I go to the range, and then we'll figure out what I'm going to carry once I get my license. But getting into this a little bit. So while I was practicing with this magazine, loading it, I was watching the debate. Let's just go start from the top. Marco Rubio started off really rough. And I know I've read all the explanations since Saturday night about what the point he was trying to make. I read what Andrew McCarthy has written at nationalreview.com. And they're all correct. And Andrew McCarthy, among other people, are correct. Marco Rubio, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it was like he became a broken record for about 2 minutes during the debate on Saturday night, and it was really weird. And my mom and dad, they're just regular conservatives, regular good conservatives. Even both of them were like, what is he doing? What is he doing? And I was under the same impression. And he was trying to he was obviously too repetitive. But he was trying to make a very sophisticated argument that obviously went over every average conservative's head. And so it's not just him repeating himself those couple times after being attacked by Chris Christie, but that what he was saying seemed like a non sequitur to the point that Chris Christie was trying to make. So it was doubly bad. I think that he could have gotten away with being repetitive if he had been more clear or clearer. It wasn't that clear, and I admit in watching it, listening to it, that I had a hard time understanding it as well. And the point he was trying to make was Chris Christie is saying Marco Rubio isn't ready to be president of the United States. He's just a Republican Obama. Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing as president, and that would be the way that Marco Rubio would be president as well. It'd just be a Republican version of it, wouldn't know what he was doing. Marco Rubio was trying to make the sophisticated argument that Barack Obama knows exactly what he was doing. So if he were to become president, Marco Rubio, he would also know what he was doing, but he would just do it in a better way. Well, that's not what he said. That's not what he said. Now, why wasn't he clear? I don't know. I think these guys go back and rewatch the debates. I know they have to have somebody in their entourage that goes back and watches it and makes notes maybe for next time, or if something's going to pop up at some town hall event, they want to be prepared. But I can't believe that Marco Rubio, even though it seems like he's double downing on what he said and the repetition of it, I don't know how he looks at that and says it makes sense. I actually got the impression, have you ever seen, you can go on YouTube, you can see compilations of reporters who have like not a nervous breakdown, but they just have like this psychological break. They'll be reporting somewhere, and then all these other weird words will start coming out of their mouth. You can find that on YouTube. And there's some well-documented cases of this. Like something in their brains just goes bad for a few seconds, and just words start coming out of their mouth that have nothing to do with the report that they're making. And the reason it's reporters is because they're most likely the people who get filmed talking. I almost got that feeling with Marco Rubio on Saturday night. Does he know what's coming out of his mouth? Does he know he's saying this for like the third time? And I was wondering about that. I guess he did, because he's continuing to defend it. But he was making an argument, most importantly, that I think flew over most conservative people's heads. I would say 99% of them. Even though they liked what he was saying, maybe, they couldn't gather the understanding of it. He could have gone about it a different way and used different words to make his point, but he didn't. Now, regarding the point that he's making, see, it seems like too many people on the right have fallen into two camps. You're either in the Chris Christie camp of saying, well, the reason that Barack Obama has been a bad president is he just doesn't know what he's doing. Doesn't know how to handle domestic policy, doesn't know how to handle foreign policy, and that is the reason we have all the problems that we do. All right? There is another line of thinking, probably more along the hardcore right, that says he knows exactly what he's doing, and he wanted all of this to happen. What doesn't get talked about much is that, you know what, you can have it both ways. You can have it a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That he might not understand what's going on in domestic policy, but he certainly was trying to screw up our foreign policy. Or he didn't know what he was doing in the foreign policy, but he's certainly trying to screw up our domestic policy. You can have it both ways, or a mixture of whatever. And that you don't find a lot of that in the last 48 hours since the last debate is interesting to me. It's like you get this feeling you have to either agree with Chris Christie's line of thinking, or you have to agree with the Andrew McCarthy, Rush Limbaugh thinking that this is all planned. I don't know. I think I've wrestled with this question for years now, since Barack Obama became president. Well before I ever did the show. And I'm still convinced it's a combination of both. Like, for example, the Iran deal. See, I can see parts of that where he wanted to screw some people over, but at the same time didn't understand the consequences of what he was doing. Right? I don't necessarily believe, as liberal as Barack Obama is, that he wants Iran to get a nuclear weapon. Okay? I don't believe that. A lot of conservatives do. I do not. However, I do think that the reason he dealt with the Iranians the way he did was to thumb his nose. Is that the saying? Or just give the middle finger to Israel. I do believe that. You can believe that and then at the same time believe that he didn't necessarily want Iran to get nuclear weapons. However, it seems like that's going to happen. You can think about that both ways. Because remember, Barack Obama, once he's done being president, he's going to be out here in the real world like the rest of us. And it would be just as dangerous to him for Iran to get a nuclear weapon as any other common citizen. Right? That's just one way I try to portray it. So you can see shades of inadequacy and overt liberalism and being anti-Israeli in the same deal. And you could say that about Obamacare or anything else. There are elements of both. And that's why I think that I've not tried to stake out either situation. Now, Marco Rubio, he is in the Andrew McCarthy, Rush Limbaugh camp, 100% saying this is all planned. Chris Christie, and if you read it, once again, Andrew McCarthy's piece at National Review, he says that, well, the reason that Chris Christie's portraying Barack Obama as just being a fool is because to portray Barack Obama as a guy who wanted to do all this as part of some plan, that means that Chris Christie was part of the plan as well, being that at times Chris Christie has gone along with the administration, which is an interesting argument. Okay? I'm going to leave it up to you to decide what you want to believe. I guess in the end, all we should be concerned about are the ends, and they've been pretty horrible. The question is, do I think that Marco Rubio can handle being president of the United States? Can he be conservative enough for me? I think he can, despite my reservations about his immigration policy, even though you also know I'm not as crazy about the immigration policy. I don't go as nuts about immigration as maybe others do, as others even on Red State Talk Radio do. Okay, just for the record. Now, Chris Christie, what amazes me about all of this is that he really did have the best debate on Saturday night. But why did he? Why did he? And I was telling my mom and dad on Saturday night that if I were president, Edward Dentzel with no middle name, becomes president of the United States, I would happily make Chris Christie my attorney general. Even though I know there's concerns about his attitude toward guns, maybe some other issues, but I know that he would faithfully execute the laws of the United States. He would be the number one law enforcer in the United States, the number one lawyer, and I would have confidence that he would take that job very seriously, always understanding that ultimately I'm the boss. Okay, now he might be a different kind of attorney general under a president who's not as conservative. I'm perfectly willing to admit that. But if I was president, I would look at Chris Christie's resume very seriously because he has a lot of experience in that area. But it also occurred to me in watching the debate, you know why he does so well? At least I didn't watch any of the undercard debates when he was in them. But in these debates, these major debates, the number one debates, the reason he does so well is nobody ever attacks him. Marco Rubio gave it kind of a good shot on Saturday night, but after what he had already done the minute before, repeating himself 2, 3, 4 times, the attack on Christie about New Jersey's credit rating being degraded, what did he say, 9 times, and Chris Christie with the storm, and 2 weeks ago, Chris Christie didn't want to go back to New Jersey because of the snow. And, of course, in response, Chris Christie said, this is how they do it in the Senate. You know, this drive-by, crack at me, and then repeating some rehearsed 25-second line. That is close. Marco Rubio got as close as anybody I've seen in these debates to criticize Chris Christie. Now, I don't know why that is. Because I realize Chris Christie has a record that can be criticized. And in fact, as I was reading and preparing for the show today and tonight, Bobby Jindal did a pretty good job on Chris Christie in one of those debates, criticizing Chris Christie's record. But it doesn't seem that's gotten, and nobody on the major debate stage got wind of that. Now, they may want to and they may have to. It just depends what's going to happen after this primary tomorrow in New Hampshire. And it could be they just haven't attacked him in the last couple debates because Christie's numbers are so low. It's just not worth it. Guys polling at 3-4%. do they feel like they have to waste the energy? And really what it's done is it has allowed Chris Christie to kind of have free reign. This is the second debate in a row where I've seen him do a pretty good job, but I'm left thinking, well, once again, maybe I think he's doing such a great job because nobody adequately defends themselves against him and then goes on the attack after him. So that's part of it. So it's not like he's having these great debates. He's just having these great debates because everybody else is arguing with each other except him. Possible. Once again, I'll leave that up to you. Ted Cruz. I thought he had an okay debate. I would not say it was stellar. I would say that my expectations for Ted Cruz with some of these questions, not that I disliked his questions, but I think he could have been a little bit more exact, a little more precise. Sometimes it takes him a while to get around to his point, and it's not like he goes off some tangent like he wants to answer a previous question and then get to the current question. Even with answering a current question, it seems sometimes that it takes him a while. He's not a soundbite guy. Let's put it that way. He does not speak in little, short, pronounced, conservative statements of like 10 words or less. That is not his style. And that may make me feel like he didn't do as well as other people think he did. I came away I didn't follow Twitter during the debate. I wasn't even online. I told you what I was doing. I was working with that magazine. By the way, my thumb is still sore today, pushing those bullets on that spring into that magazine. I didn't follow any of it. Don't know what anybody was saying, but after the debate was over, I thought, Ted Cruz did okay, but not crazy good. And then I read all from Red State to Hot Air, National Review, Drudge Report, all these different places that, Ted Cruz did a heck of a job. I don't know. Maybe my expectations for him are a little high. Because I know that maybe you do it too, that you hear these questions, you're probably thinking what you would say. Yes, you want to hear what your favorite candidate's going to say, but in your mind, you have an expectation of what you think they should say, and then you have an expectation of what you would say if you were standing up there on stage. And I guess that's the way I know that my belief system is probably most in line with Ted Cruz. And it could be that I expect him to answer like I would answer, and maybe that's just being that I've never run for office, I'm never going to run for office, that maybe my answers wouldn't be as not politically correct, but correct within the realm of politics that Ted Cruz tries to make his. Mm-hmm. As far as his apology to Ben Carson, I think it was sincere. I think that whole episode has been totally blown way out of proportion. And that Ben Carson, who's supposed to be such a great guy, doesn't understand that and wanted to continue to make it an issue on Saturday night tells me something. On the other issues, Ted Cruz did just fine. There was a topic of the women, drafting women. I may get to that just as a topic later in the show. We'll see. But I just didn't think he had a spectacular debate. I don't know if it helped him any or hurt him any. No idea. Donald Trump. If you played a drinking game, and I don't drink, but for those of you who do consume alcohol once in a while, you'd have a really, really good drinking game if you had to drink every time he said terrific, every time he said tremendous, every time he said the word, he's a nice guy, he's a good friend or something like that, if you had to drink every time he used those words or those phrases, you would be drunk by the midpoint of the debate. Any of these debates, going back to the first one. How people who have any political knowledge and have followed politics for a while take this guy seriously continues to amaze me. People who are familiar with the process, are familiar with the issues, he's just totally incoherent. When he was asked about single-payer health care, he pretty much disavowed that he ever said it. He goes, we're going to have our health care system is going to be terrific. And then in the next breath, he wants to portray the rest of us, I guess other Republicans. He never specified who he meant. But we Republicans, we can't leave these people out in the street. That sounds like a Democrat talking point to me. I hear that, and I think of the ads of Paul Ryan pushing that little old lady off the cliff. Because that's all Donald Trump is buying into when he makes a statement like that. Mm-hmm. The problem is that he thinks that only government can fix the problem of people who can't seem to get some sort of health coverage. That's the problem. And that's the problem we are going to have if he becomes president. Likewise, he says these insurance companies are getting rich. Oh, really? Oh, really? If they're getting so rich, why is it that every one of them is trying to get out of Obamacare? Why is it that every one of them is backing away from these health exchanges? If they're getting so rich from it, why are they running away from it? I know you may look at your premium that you have to pay. I've talked to you about my premium that has gone up since Obamacare became law. And some people think, well, look, they're ripping me off, these increased premiums. No, they're losing money. You think they're making more money just because your premiums have gone up? No, and that's the bizarreness of it. That's the bizarreness of it. You would think since your premiums are going up that they're making more money, thus they'd want to stick in Obamacare. They don't. They were making more money when your premiums were lower. Imagine that. But once government gets involved in markets, this is what happens. It gets all screwed up. Everything gets skewed. Everything's a contradiction. Everything's a paradox. But Donald Trump doesn't seem to realize that. He thinks the insurance companies are getting rich. Nothing could be further from the truth. There are a lot of truths about Obamacare, and that's not one of them. That's what, once again, that's why I don't understand that, you hear something like that, and you'd think that was the Democrat primary. You hear about insurance companies making too much money. That sounds like Hillary Clinton. That sounds like Bernie Sanders. That sounds like Elizabeth Warren. It shouldn't come out of the mouth of anybody who's running for the Republican nomination, but Donald Trump is. And he kind of behaved himself, for the most part, until the end, once he knew, and this is, once again, how you guys out there who think you're so manly, you drive your big trucks, you got your big guns, you got all the tattoos, and you love Donald Trump. You know what kind of guy Donald Trump is? He waited until Ted Cruz was done with his closing statement, and Donald Trump knew Ted Cruz wasn't going to get to say another word on that stage, and that is when Donald Trump made his dig about Cruz winning in Iowa. Does that sound like a real man to you? For all you guys out there who support Donald Trump, you think that you're real men? Would you shoot somebody running away from you? Because that's what Donald Trump did. He had every opportunity to say that during the debate where Ted Cruz could have responded and they could have argued about it. No. He waited in the end to get that dig in. Once again, Donald Trump, not a good guy and not a real man. I've been trying to tell you. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk.
Talk radio the way the founding fathers would have done it.
I'm just a man trying to make his mark on history.
Red State Talk Radio.
Accuracy and range are a necessity. Now comfort is an option as well. Nemo Arms introduces the Omen 300 Win Mag. The Omen 300 is perfectly balanced for reduced recoil, creating sub-minute of angle accuracy. And fit for the tightest of tolerances. The Omen is offered in carbine or full-length models with a 10 or 14-round magazine. American-made, owned, and designed. Nemo Arms is setting a new standard in modern sporting rifles. Find out more at nemoarms.com.
Less than 2% of America's population volunteers to defend our nation. Though we rarely see them, we live the benefits of these heroes' sacrifices in the freedom we know and the safety we feel. Each and every day, the Gary Sinise Foundation serves our nation by honoring our defenders, veterans, first responders, and their families. We do this by creating and supporting unique programs designed to entertain, educate, inspire, strengthen, and build communities. The Gary Sinise Foundation has grown because the need has never been greater. Together, we'll improve the lives of thousands of American heroes and their families day in, day out, all year long. While we can never do enough to show our gratitude to our nation's defenders, our veterans, our first responders, and the families who stand by them, we can always do a little more. Join us. Visit GarySiniseFoundation.org.
Hi, I'm Gil Fulbright. The people who run my campaign, they've made this commercial, and I'm in it. This campaign, it's not about me. It's about crafting a version of me that'll appeal to you. A version that visits random work sites with paid actors pointing at things. A version of me that doesn't find old people loathsome or pointless. Has a conventionally attractive yet curiously still family. Listening to my constituents, legislating, these are things I don't do. What I do is spend about 70% of my time raising funds for re-election. I'd do anything to stay in office. My name's Gil Fulbright, but hell, I'll change my name to Phil Goldbright, or Bill Fulbright, or fill up my mouth with farts. These are the things that are important to me. And these are the fine people that finance my campaign. Now, in order to do these things, I have to stay in office. And to stay in office, I have to keep these guys happy. Now, if any of these things make these guys unhappy, well, my hands are tied. So come November, the choice is clear. You want another spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? Or a spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? I'm Philip a Mouth with Farts, and I approve this message.
We're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue to talk about Donald Trump, but I want to move on to a particular issue that I did not think got a fair shake. In fact, I had to explain this during the debate, and I was up there standing in front of my parents, kind of animating how this all worked. But the topic of eminent domain came up in the Republican debate. I don't know. You'd probably have to go back. Maybe it came up in 2012, did it with Mitt Romney at some point? Maybe it did. But there was a considerable discussion about eminent domain in the debate last night. Or not last night, but Saturday night. And Donald Trump continued to go on. We need eminent domain to build schools, to build bridges. And in the context, he was correct. It wasn't until Jeb Bush, of all people, went back at Donald Trump, and of course they got into a little bit of an argument, and Donald Trump, as he does, poo-pooed Jeb Bush. He said Jeb Bush trying to be a tough guy. But unfortunately, the Kelo decision, K-E-L-O, was never mentioned. At least I didn't hear it. Because that's the reason that question even came up, was because at one point, Donald Trump believed that the Kelo decision is eminent domain, is an eminent domain case, which it is not, no matter what the Supreme Court might say. Kelo was a decision where one private company got the government to take property away from another private company. That is not eminent domain. By force, you should know. And this came back to the issue of Donald Trump. Did he really try to push a little old lady in Atlantic City off her property so he could build a parking lot? And he and Jeb Bush went back and forth about that. But make no doubt that Donald Trump is completely in favor of one company, once again, he's the one who talks about special interests and lobbyists and how he won't have to deal with any of them. Well, that's the way the Kelo decision got handled. And Donald Trump supported that. And you should know, after all that, the entire court case with Kelo, that land that got taken away from another person was never used. Was never developed. It still sits there today like it did whenever the case was happening, whenever the deal went down. That's a travesty as well. Donald Trump is in favor of that. Most of the other people on stage are not. But it is not eminent domain, and that they didn't get into the specifics of that because, like I said, my parents, good conservatives, just regular conservatives. But I'm going to guess until I started explaining to them, they couldn't figure out, why are we arguing about eminent domain? Of course, eminent domain is a good thing, but the topic wasn't eminent domain. It was the seizure of property by government for another private entity. Then, of course, the Keystone Pipeline got brought up, and it's funny to me that, once again, me putting myself in the shoes of anybody on that stage, except Donald Trump, I would have made the point. The difference is, Donald, is that those people in Nebraska and where this pipeline would go, they actually want it. The little old lady who you tried to kick off her property, she didn't want to be kicked off her property. That's the difference. Those Nebraskans and wherever else that pipeline's going to go, they know it's going to bring tax dollars, it's going to be jobs. If their property is going to get bought, they know it's going to go through the roof. Good for them. They can move somewhere else if they'd like. Maybe stay in Nebraska, go somewhere else. Who the hell cares? They want that to come through. You know who doesn't? The environmentalists don't. The liberals don't. The kooks don't. But the people who actually own the property want it. It's our federal government that's getting in the way. It's completely flipped from your situation in Atlantic City, where you wanted to come in and kick a little girl out. A little old lady out, I should say. It's completely different from the Kelo decision, where the person didn't want to give up his land and was forced to. In Nebraska, those people don't mind. Maybe a couple do, but most do not. That's the difference. Once again, that's something that wasn't brought up during the debate that should have been. The attitude, the point of view of the people who actually own the land means something. And in each of those cases, from Kelo to the Atlantic City deal to Nebraska, it's all a little bit different. So try to put them all under one umbrella is not right. It's not, but it matters. It matters. The problem is Donald Trump can't think in specifics because he doesn't have an interest in the issues, the intricacies of each case. He just sees it all as eminent domain, which it's not. Once again, that worries me. It doesn't keep me up at night, but it does worry me. You need to know the difference between all of these. And if Ed Dentzel in Madeira Beach, Florida knows it, then somebody running for president knows it. The only problem in that particular exchange regarding eminent domain, it was Jeb Bush of all people who was arguing with him, which I don't know how far that goes. At this point, I don't know how much sway Jeb Bush has. In fact, I would say that if Jeb Bush is taking an attitude on something, most of the people watching are going to take the opposite, just because he's a Bush. You know, I don't care for Jeb Bush. The Bushes, I'm kind of over them. But in this particular case, he was making the correct argument. So that was interesting, although it wasn't in depth as much as it should have been. John Kasich, I can only hope that he doesn't do well in New Hampshire, so we can just kind of get rid of him. I think I asked this question the last time a debate, or maybe even before that. Has he changed, or have we changed? This is a guy who in the 90s was a big balanced budget guy, decent conservative, everything. I can remember living in Pennsylvania and being, knowing that he's from Ohio. That guy from Ohio is really working hard to keep federal government's growth under control, working with Newt Gingrich. Now, all these years later, 20 years later, it's like the opposite. Has he changed? Has he taken this particular angle because he saw it was an open angle? He's going to be a little bit more moderate than the rest of the guys? I don't know. He certainly does try to be Mr. Friendly up there and going to work across the aisle. And that's just... I just hope that he doesn't do very well so we can move on. Ben Carson, he had an opportunity. Once again, he didn't get a lot of chance to talk on Saturday night, but after a couple of the answers that he gave as a moderator, I wouldn't want to call on him either. They gave him a question that should have been in his wheelhouse, being that he's a doctor. I think it had to do with the Zika virus. I think that's what it was. I think. And his answer was so rambling. I was thinking it in my head, boy, is he making any sense? He was getting into it seemed to me that it was getting such into the minutia and everything. I was thinking it, and then I think it was my dad said, he goes, I don't even know what he's saying. So my dad said it, I was thinking it. So between the two of us, Ben Carson's answer was the same, and it meant it wasn't very good. So if he can't even answer a question that has something to do with health and the national security of a country in regards to a disease that's carried by mosquitoes that can be harmful specifically to pregnant women, and it's doing damage in Brazil where there's going to be an Olympics this summer, maybe. We'll see if they have the Olympics there or not. And he can't answer that question. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. Just put a softball up there, and the moderators, I know who they are. They're not conservative. It's ABC. I thought that Mary Catherine Ham, is that her name? Representing the right wing of the media in the United States, did a fine job. The only thing that I would say about her is her questions got a little long. But the moderators were not great. They weren't horrible. They were somewhere in between. But they gave Ben Carson a chance to really shine, and he blew it. He blew it. So those are some of my takeaways from the debate. I thought the debate went fairly fast. Started at 8 o'clock, was done before 11. And could have had worse debates. Donald Trump being there, they managed to stick to the issues. After the first 10 minutes with Chris Christie versus Marco Rubio, there weren't a lot of fireworks, in my opinion. Maybe Jeb Bush and Donald Trump with eminent domain, some. But after about the first 10, 20 minutes with everybody talking over each other and everybody wanting their time, it kind of calmed down. And we got some decent answers. I just would say that Chris Christie won it because he wasn't attacked. I think he'd look a lot worse if people could actually ding him. Maybe somebody's going to learn that sooner or later, if he's even in the next debate, if he continues to go on past New Hampshire. And I thought that Ted Cruz's debate, at least in conservative circles, was overrated. I think that Marco Rubio maybe did a little damage to himself with this debate and being repetitive, but he finally got it going later in the debate, talking about abortion, and he had some other quality answers. But in that argument with Chris Christie, he definitely got the worst of it. In this argument, who's better, a governor to be president of the United States or a senator? I don't know. Jimmy Carter was a governor. I know he didn't do a very good job as president. George Herbert Walker Bush, he was never a governor. And yes, he was only a one-termer, but he ran into some unique circumstances, I would say. Bill Clinton, governor of Arkansas, did okay in a couple things, but not overtly great as president, mainly because he's a Democrat. George W. Bush, governor of Texas, second most populous state. How did he do? Pretty good on some things. Terrorism, good. Other issues, not so great. So, just because Barack Obama has been a horrible president, it's not necessarily because he came out of the Senate. All right? I would tend to think that even if he'd have been governor of Illinois or governor of Hawaii or governor of Kenya, I'm kidding there, a little jokey joke in there, I think that he would still been the same kind of president. Chris Christie, because he believes that the executive experience matters, thinks otherwise. That goes back to Chris Christie thinking that Barack Obama is bad because he didn't have enough executive experience before he became president. Whereas, once again, there's that other group that thinks that he wanted it all to go this way. No matter if it had been a governor, senator, representative, whoever else, dog catcher, he still would have been the same kind of president because he has an agenda and he's fulfilling it. I think it's somewhere in between, as I said at the beginning of the show. Before I go tonight, I just want to get into a couple issues, though, that were brought up. Political issues, I should say. Women in the draft. I haven't had a chance to really talk about that. I am not for women being in combat positions in the military. I'm not. Not for the reason you might think. In fact, the reason I don't want women in combat positions is the same reason I don't want gay people in combat positions. And the reason is this. Even though I've never been in the military, I know this. That when you are in a squad, a platoon, a group of men, straight men, what do they try to do to you? They try to take, in the military, they try to take your personality away. You know, they go to basic training, they shave your head, they run you up and down, and really mentally beat you up, trying to turn you into a killing machine. That's the way the people in our military are supposed to be. There is no time for sexual attraction and feeling that certain guys in your platoon are more important than other guys in your platoon. You're all equal, all working for each other. Well, what gets in the way of that? Sexual attraction. All right? In the case of gay men, I'm not gay. All right? I have nothing against men who like other men. However, I do know that could cause a problem in a platoon where you do have a gay man or a couple gay men who are attracted to each other. And suddenly they see themselves as being more important between the both of them than the rest of the platoon. I don't know if military training can break that kind of bond. Okay? That's my concern. It doesn't have anything to do with there's going to be rapes or they're going to, a bunch of gay military guys are going to corner one straight guy and do anything. Has nothing to do with that at all. But when you start getting sexual attraction involved in a mission where your life is in danger, that can cause problems. And it's the same way with women. You put women in a foxhole with a bunch of American men somewhere, and they have to fight, do something. They have to fight. There is a natural tendency in men to protect women that goes outside of any sort of military situation, any sort of military goal, and that could endanger the entire mission. And even though I've never been in the military, as a civilian, that's what I think about. Men coming to the aid of their female they think that they have to protect the women, even though they've all been through basic training together and everything. It's just something within us as men, if you're a good man, that you feel that there's just something hardwired in there. And that's fine out here in the civilian world. That is not fine in the military world. It's not. That can get people killed. People making decisions based on attraction and natural tendencies and not based on orders. And it seems to me when you have just a bunch of straight guys, you're not going to have those problems. Now, if you want to say, well, we need to just all put women together, okay. All straight women have their own platoons together. Then the issue is going to be, can they physically, not mentally, but physically fulfill what needs to be done? And that's a whole other concern of lowering standards so women can meet Marine standards, meet Army Ranger standards. And if those standards are being lowered, once again, that causes danger for everyone. So that's my standpoint. I perfectly know well that women can shoot guns. And machine guns, they can drive tanks, all of those things. Absolutely true. And they're mentally tough. I have no doubt about that at all. It's just when you get sexual attraction and men and women or gay men together or gay women together, that cracks could be formed within a platoon that's everybody's supposed to look at each other equally. That's what I worry about. And as far as that Mexican wall, that the talk that popped up during the debate, and I think there was a cute little exchange between Jeb Bush and Donald Trump regarding that. You have to think of it this way. Here's why Mexico is never going to build a wall for us to keep their people out of our country. Here's why. We in the United States, we would never build a wall to keep criminals within our country. If criminals were leaving the United States and trying to sneak into Canada, you know what it would say? See ya. See ya. Bye. Bye, criminals. Bye, people who don't want to work. Bye, people who traffic drugs. Bye, people who traffic other illegal immigrants. See ya. You can't leave our country fast enough. And here's what I also know. There is no amount of money that Canada would ever be able to pay us to build a wall to keep those people in the United States. None. None. Because we'd all be too happy, the people would be too happy, the politicians would be too happy that those people are leaving the country. All right? That's why I know that Mexican wall, that wall paid for by Mexico to keep their own dregs of society down in their country instead of coming into our country, is never going to happen. We're going to have to build it on our own with our money. We're going to have to do it that way. Donald Trump in that, he's just talking out his butt like usual. But you've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can find my books at Amazon.com. Just do a search for Edward Dentzel. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. edwarddentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find those shows at SoundCloud, Podbean, YouTube. You can also go to edwarddentzel.com/book to download the first chapter of my next novel, The Comeback. You can do that for free. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.